Hey, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Pittsburgh.NET User Group meetup for the year. Happy New Year. We are part of the .NET Foundation. So you can follow us on meetup.com, join us in PGHDOTNET, and you can follow us on the social handles. And today's topic, modernizing data workloads with Azure DocumentDB. We have our seasoned presenter. He has presented in our group multiple times before. Santosh. Hey, Santosh, welcome to the group.
Hey, Bala, how's it going? Thanks for having me here. It's really exciting to talk to you guys again.
Thank you very much. Stage is yours.
Cool. Thanks, folks, for joining this talk. So, today I will be talking about Azure DocumentDB and what it is. And, I'll be addressing questions like why DocumentDB and why now. So, that should be an interesting talk. So, just to give you some idea, this is a new-ish technology in that it just starting to catch on. So I will definitely, this is a newish talk, so please bear with any kind of technical difficulties I may have during the talk, but definitely looking forward to a good time. um, so with that, I will dive into the talk itself. So before I dive into the talk, I wanted to just introduce myself, Santosh. I'm Santosh. I work with in Azure Engineering Ops, and if you want to connect to me, you can do it via LinkedIn or Blue Sky, or you can even look up this repository and other repositories I may worked on at GitHub. Let's see. So today I wanted to. It's a small talk, hopefully, but we can keep it. We can keep going as long as you guys want to. But it's smallish talk. It's not each of these is like 2 or 3 slides, so not an extensive agenda. I'll be talking about an introduction to DocumentDB. Now this name is very confusing, so I definitely wanted to discuss that a little bit more in detail. I'll discuss some of the architecture behind the engine, and you'll see some familiar actors and in this particular movie. We'll discuss some key features and then differentiation between DocumentDB and MongoDB and DocumentDB and SQL Server, because these are technologies that our folks know best. And then we'll talk about what DocumentDB right now. So a little bit of an intro to DocumentDB. This is a familiar name. Back in 2017, there was a Microsoft like service named DocumentDB. This one is not that DocumentDB, so I wanted to make that known right off the bat. Like if you go look at some of the old repositories, you'll see the name DocumentDB. This one has nothing to do with that. And you will also see that there is a AWS service named DocumentDB. This has nothing to do with that. So what this is this is a new open source project, and this project was released in 2025. So this is like a brand new project. So it's I saying this, repeating this multiple times so people don't get confused by this. The key differentiation is that this is basically a MongoDB API that is running on top of Postgres. So there's two different databases here, MongoDB and Postgres. So basically, what you'll be doing is you'll be using the MongoDB syntax and to connect to an API. So basically, you'll be sending a MongoDB commands as if you're talking to a MongoDB database, but in the backend, a Postgres database will be handling it. So this kind of brings the familiar MongoDB syntax, tooling, and such for developers. But behind the engines, it brings the reliability that PostgreSQL has kind of developed over the past 40 years. So this is actually very good for ops people. So, and I'll show you how to set one up in your local machine itself. kind of a best of both worlds approach. Uh, the primary use case of this is anyone who is familiar with MongoDB development can start using this, and ops teams that are familiar with Postgres enterprise features, they can start handling this. So kind of like I said again, best of both worlds. Uh, this does offer ACID guarantees. So if you're familiar with SQL Server, ACID, which is atomicity, consistency, isolation, durability, and this offers that full transactional support. Uh, uh, but and that's the cool part of this. But keep in mind that this is offered at various levels, at document level and collection level. But we have to be careful when we do this because it's not exactly the same as SQL, where you put everything in one transaction and run it. This is a slightly different way of doing it, and we can certainly. That's something that's probably beyond the scope of this talk, but happy to talk through that if anyone has questions. Uh, and you can actually globally distribute this. This is just Docker container, so you can distribute this through Azure's infrastructure. But also, if someone is using on-prem, you can do this on-prem. You can take this and run it on AKS, and you can run it on a different cloud provider like AWS or Google or DigitalOcean or whoever. So this is an fully open source project, and you can run it anywhere. So that's the cool part about this. So so why DocumentDB, right? So DocumentDB, the number one thing is you don't have the concept of a table. You just have documents. So there's no alter table type thing. So if you want to change a document, you just replace it. There's no you're not like changing all the columns in a table and so on. So it's pretty flexible development model. Uh, so the other thing is, it's fully JSON native, which means there's no object relational model impedance mismatch. You can just store and retrieve things as complete documents. There's no ORM involved over there. It's super developer friendly. So with JSON, you can kind of just map it to application objects and start writing, whether it's JavaScript, Python, Java, C Sharp, whatever it is. You can just start coding in whichever language you like. The performance, it's great in performance because it's not it doesn't have to do joins, so that makes it pretty fast. All the reads and writes are just point reads and writes, which makes it super optimized. Scalability, because these are documents. As long as you can properly partition them, you can spread across multiple nodes, which makes it almost infinitely scalable. And yeah, a lot of DocumentDB is already running on Azure's cloud, and it's being used by a lot of big customers in massive scalable apps. So there's already support for this. But today I'll not be talking as much about Azure. I will be primarily discussing the DocumentDB open source project, which is actually quite fantastic. You can actually go and read the code for that one. So
sorry to interrupt. There was one quick question about somebody's asking, is this Cosmos DB? Or it might be a good time to talk right now.
Okay. No, that's a good question. So is this Cosmos DB? This is one of the services under Cosmos DB. So this is it comes from the Cosmos DB team. And basically, Cosmos DB team has been running this as MongoDB API, and Cosmos DB for MongoDB API. There used to be a product known as Cosmos DB for Mongo API, and it was running on vCore model. So basically, instead of using request units, which was the measuring units, this was like dedicated compute model, a vCore model. And basically, that particular product was using Azure DocumentDB. So that has become Azure DocumentDB, and it already runs on Azure. So if you use Azure MongoDB, and use the vCore model. If you are using that, you are basically using Azure DocumentDB, and Cosmos DB team is the one that supports this. Hopefully that answers the question. All right, cool. I will move on if no further question. And Bala, feel free to chime in anytime. I'm happy to answer questions. I can't see or anything.
Yeah,
So
absolutely, man. I'll
yeah,
take care. Thank you.
yeah. So let's see. We are talking about the high level design. So 1 second, let me make sure. Okay, so the high level design is it's kind of straightforward. On the back end, you have a Postgres database. So basically, what I encourage everyone is after this, to best understand this, you need to understand two different databases. One is uh, Postgres, and the other one is MongoDB. If you understand these, which there's like a broad knowledge of Mongo and Postgres across the software development teams. So I believe that everyone will understand this. So basically, this is kind of like a high level design. You'll see on the left there is a MongoDB app, and it sends data via the Mongo protocol. The data reaches the gateway of the document DB, and the gateway of the document DB translates this into Postgres and talks to the underlying Postgres database. So that's pretty much the architecture. I'm sure that if you rip it apart and see, there's like different. Uh, it's basically using Postgres underneath. There's not much magic over there, and the Postgres. Uh, the gateway basically acts like a translation layer between the Mongo clients and the Postgres backend. It interprets the wire protocol, and then it maps the command to the proper Postgres operation. That's the whole purpose of this. The other thing is the gateway also manages things like session handling, transactions, cursor-based paging, and other things that Postgres needs. And it also handles tailor termination. So if you send HTTP TPS request, it terminates that, and then excuse me, sends the traffic to the backend. So kind of diving furthermore into the architecture. So these are the three different layers that core components that it uses. The first one is the gateway layer, which is the PGHDOTNET gateway. It is the entry point for all MongoDB clients. Basically, it handles MongoWire protocol. It manages things like connection pooling, load balancing, and so on. Again, like I said, it performs authentication, TLS termination, and other things. And once it gets processes the request, it forwards it to the appropriate Postgres instance in the backend. So it's kind of like a adapter. You travel to different countries, you bring an adapter, you plug it in, and then your device works in a different country. So just think of the gateway as an adapter. Then there's the PG document DB, which is the main one, which is the Postgres extension. It's the extension that is so Postgres. If if you have, again, this is small talk, so I don't have time to dive into Postgres. Maybe I can do a workshop if people are interested. If so, ping me and let me know. But the whole thing about Postgres is it's extensible ecosystem. You have Postgres SQL server, and then you can add extensions to that. So this is PG document DB is just an extension you add to that. And then it implements, so basically what it does is it gets the MongoDB query language and commands. And then it provides things like, in a document DB, you have a MongoDB, you have like collection, create, drop, add. You have to do all of that for collections of documents. It handles all of that. It handles the CRUD operations. It implements other things like the aggregation pipelines, index, query optimization. So this is where the MongoDB semantics meets the Postgres storage. like that's the meeting point of that, the PG document DB extension. And finally, there's a PG document DB core, which is basically the core library. This is the foundation layer for document processing. If folks are familiar with MongoDB, MongoDB uses it, even though it's JSON, they call it BSON, binary JSON. And the post PG document DB core handles the encoding and decoding of the binary encoding and decoding. It does things like document validation, any kind of like enforcement. It does the low-level data type conversions, the storage, like it makes storage efficient, and then no, basically it's the performance critical path for all document operations. So these are the three major components. So if you ever wanted to, if someone did a pop quiz on what are the different components, you can basically toss this diagram and say these are the components, basic components, and then you can dive saying that these are the core components that run behind that enable these basic components. Okay, so I want to, before I dive into demo, I want to quickly talk a couple more theory points, and then I'm jumping a little bit around, but please bear with me because I do want to uh, talk about uh, the theory before we dive into the demo, because the demo might get stuck or something, and I don't want to miss out on the theory. So um, the people ask why does why Azure DocumentDB, why does this exist now, right? So we want to know the what core problems it's solving. So the first thing is vendor lock-in. So in 2018, MongoDB licensed again, this is boring, but kind of bear with me. MongoDB license changed from something called AGPL to SSPL. I don't remember the full acronyms. So this created like SSPL is not recognized as open source. So basically, MongoDB was open source, and then they made it not open source anymore. Uh, that when you suddenly change like that, it becomes a huge issue for companies that have like all the procurement, compliance, and all the requirements, right? So that basically that pissed off a lot of different organizations. So many government and regulated industries, they cannot even use the SSPL license software. So this made it difficult for them. Uh, Linux, like Red Hat, Debian, Ubuntu, all of these, they used to come with often came with MongoDB like built into them because it was open source, and then because of the SSPL, uh, basically all of these distributions had to remove MongoDB from their distributions. You could add MongoDB later on, but this kind of became a political thing, and then legal departments started that legal departments always flag anything that is SSPL license as high risk. So basically what we discovered was customers want um, MongoDB's developer experience, but they also want freedom from the licensing burdens that it brings. So basically, they didn't want like a vendor lock-in for MongoDB. So MongoDB is the product, but it's also the company. They wanted freedom from the company, if that makes sense. So, but they didn't want to switch databases, right? Like if I switch from, let's say, I'm on SQL, and then I suddenly decide I want to go to Oracle, that's rewriting a lot of my queries, and they didn't want to do that. So basically, Azure DocumentDB, what it does is it decouples uh, the front end from the product. So basically, you get MongoDB compatibility on the front end. The back end is still an open source product. That's like not a SSPL or any of those high risk licensing. So hopefully this is making sense. But this is some of the um, some of the drama that went on in the back end. But this, as a result of that drama, we had this new product that basically handles a lot of the licensing, but also there's a lot of advantages to this because it's now built on Postgres, which is far better at scaling than MongoDB itself. So that's the great part about this. So if you ever want, if anyone ever mentions, if you had to pick between MongoDB as MongoDB companies MongoDB, or if you had to pick between an open source MongoDB, that would be up to your company and how you do it. But if you wanted to pick the open source, this is one of the great options you have out there. Hopefully that makes sense. So the other, yeah. So the other problem is, other thing it solves is, it leverages mature relational database in the backend. So Postgres, like I mentioned already, provided ACID transaction, strong consistency, like a lot of like good operational tooling, scalability, and so on. So basically, the document DB it's taking MongoDB's like cool features for the front end and Postgres' reliability in the back end. And basically Postgres has 30 plus years it's been running in production, so it's not a new prune database. Asset transactions, it has like uh, durability guarantees like write ahead logins. If you have dealt with Postgres, you'll see some of these features. It has a lot of operational tooling like dump, restore, replication, monitoring, and so on. All of that you get with that. uh, so you don't need to choose between like one or the other. You get both of them. DBAs, SREs already have existing expertise in Postgres. You have there are even like in uh, custom infrastructure that is specifically built for Postgres clusters. So you can actually run these in those clusters. So Postgres licenses, you can use existing Postgres licenses if you have any, instead of building new MongoDB clusters. And this is Apache 2.0 licensed, as in Azure DocumentDB is Apache 2.0 license, which is OSI approved. There's no strings attached. It's completely community driven development. So you have community driven open source development on MongoDB and on Postgres, and you get both of those. And it's the fantastic part about this is, even though it's a Microsoft library, this is kind of cloud neutral. Like I mentioned, you can run this on prem, you can run this in GCP or AWS or Rackspace, or DigitalOcean, whichever provider you want to run it with. So basically you can even take this open source and create your own database as a service. So it's that it's that fantastic. Um, and government and so some of the industries that are super regulated can adopt this as because of its licensing. They don't need to go through additional hoops. And the final cool part is because it's because of its licensing, you can package Linux distros with this software and ship it, and people can use it. So there's no um, like additional hoops you have to jump through with the Linux distros. So one of the other questions that is asked is, SQL Server people ask, why should we care about this Azure DocumentDB? So from a SQL, this is kind of like a larger trend, right? So basically, you may use a SQL Server. You may see a lot of systems these days that use SQL Server, but that also use a document database like Mongo or Cosmos. So for instance, you could have a system that is built that is a shopping cart, and you do the different things like user preferences and everything else on SQL, like the more secure data on SQL, and then you may choose to do things like the listing products and so on Mongo or Cosmos or some other document database. So document the mixed database paradigm is already here to stay. So this just gives you another option of leveraging your team's development team's expertise with Mongo, your ops team's expertise with Postgres, and using that to deploy. So, and then I already talked about things like JSON and ACID and portability. So you have all these, you have the architectural tools that are already needed. So that's one of the reasons you should. So The other thing is, it's part of a broader movement, right? So basically, DocumentDB, is MongoDB running on PostgreSQL. It is it is kind of using, or I should say, deriving from something called FerretDB, which is a MongoDB compatibility that open source project. Postgres JSONB adoption already exists. API first databases already exists. So you're just building on top of existing resources. So that's when people ask like why should SQL Server people care about it, this is why. So with that, I will stop this presentation. I will need to switch over to my IDE. But any questions so far? If so, give me 1 second while I do this. Able to see this?
Yeah, that should be good now.
Okay, perfect. So a couple of things I wanted to do is, first of all, people ask, how do I install or document DB on my machine, and then how do I, how do I get started, right? That's the most common question people ask. So let's work on this. So trying to pull up my instructions. Okay, so document DB, right? So document DB the short answer to that is you can run document DB as, let's see. You can run document DB on your Docker desktop. So that is how you get started. So when people ask how do I get started, just run it on your desktop as as a Docker container. So you'll see that there's a document DB Docker container. But what I would like to do is I don't even want to, do this magical thing where it's already set up. So this is where, it's going to get a little rough because I'm doing a live delete of my existing system and trying, working on this in a live presentation, but, we'll figure it out. So, this is, as you can see, I deleted my document DB container, and with that, I'll switch over to my trusted command prompt, right? So this is my Windows terminal, and what I'm going to do in here is, as I pull up the instructions, I'm going to pull the latest document DB Docker image. So there you go. It is pulling my image, and we can double check in here. Pages. There is a document DB image right here. So, but I don't have a container. So what you'll do is I'm going to tag this container as a document DB so that I know what it's running. So switching over to my command prompt, I'm going to tag this in here, and that's tagging the image. And then what we will do is we will run a command that actually starts the container. So I'm starting the container, right? So this is my document DB. So it says Docker run, and then I'm running it on port 10260. So this is my port that I'm exposing for. So there's two ports I'm exposing: 10260 and 9712. 10260 is just application port that I'm exposing, but port 9712 is the proprietary port for Postgres SQL. So I can send my, I want to show you that I'm connecting in here with both Mongo and Postgres. So that's going to be interesting if this works. So this is a password I'm giving it. There's better ways to do this. Definitely a talk for a or topic for a different talk. Do you really want to do it this way? Probably not, but we'll see if it gets created. So I have my document DB container created on here, right? So let's do this. Next thing we'll do is I want to connect to the Mongo shell on my container, right? So I'm connecting to Mongo shell, and it's saying Mongo. Okay, I don't have Mongo shell locally, but that shouldn't be a problem because my Docker container already has Mongo shell, so I should be able to connect to my Docker container. But the question is, can I just connect without doing any kind of magic? Like, do I need a connection string or something? We'll see. So I'm trying to connect to this. Networking error, it refused my connection. Now remember that when I configured the Docker container, I want to do a couple of commands. You'll see that I set it up with a username and password. So what I'm gonna do is I'll try to run the Mongo shell. I'll try to connect with this connection string. And you'll see that in this connection string, it says direct connection is true, server selection timeout, blah, blah, blah. So, and one of the things it's doing is it's setting the TLS equal to true, and it's allowing invalid certificate. Basically, what it's saying is, yeah, it's a local certificate. It's a HTTPS connection. Allow it. That's what we're doing here. And then this is the MongoDB. It's saying that use MongoDB. This is the username. This is the password, and this is the port on which it's connecting. So let's see if this works. Okay, so it connected to my MongoDB shell. So this now I can start running all kinds of commands, right? So let's start with this. So I'm going to create a so let's see first of all. So one other thing I wanted to mention before I went too far into this was something called Visual Studio Code. So many people are familiar with Visual Studio Code. Visual Studio Code, comes with extensions. This is the DocumentDB extension. So you can go to Visual Studio Code, and the connection string that I posted, you can simply copy paste that. You can just say enter the connection string in here, and it will actually connect you to your local instance. You can also use Visual Studio Code to connect to your instance that is not local, assuming that it's visible from the cloud. But in this case, we're just using local instance. So uh, what I can do in here is let me drop this, delete database, test and its content. Please enter the word test. Okay, test. And then drop the data. You can also see that there's some additional databases and collections in here. For instance, there's analytics collection, and that has like some data in it, right? So you can definitely see that this one has some total metrics and stuff in it. So there's a lot of good tools here, but I just wanted to show you that you can use multiple tools for this. In this case, we'll just use command line. I remember that I connected with Mongo shell. You can create a collection. So now I created a patient collection. So I'll go back to my DocumentDB extension, and when I refresh this, you'll see that it created a test database and a patient collection. This one has 0 documents, and then I will run a MongoDB command, and this command is basically saying, in the database, in the patient collection, insert one record, and for the record, the name is test patient, age is 30. So insert one, and it says acknowledge true, and this is the object ID. Let's see if we can find 666 object ID in our Explorer. Oops. Wrong one. So refresh this. There you go. So you see that it created the 666 object ID and a bunch of other parameters in here. So just to show that it's a flexible schema, I'm going to insert another one, test patient 2, age 49, state, I'll do Florida. Right, so now you can see that it's doing flexible schema. It's not stopping me from inserting it. I can just completely change around the schema. There's nothing stopping me from doing that. So it basically supports all kinds of like if you go and read MongoDB's whole CRUD operation list, it'll support all of that. So one thing to mention is that DocumentDB supports about 99% of features of the regular MongoDB. There is a differential of like around 1% that it doesn't support. Don't ask me which one. Not quite familiar with that, but you can get most of your work done, or pretty much all of your work done for MongoDB using DocumentDB. So, any questions? I'll pause there, take a break, see any questions, or I don't see anything on the chats.
No, nothing yet. You're good.
Okay. Cool. How am I doing in time? I still have 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, cool. So let's see, what else do we want to do? So this is my Mongo shell, right? So okay. I'm gonna exit from here. Let's try one more thing. So we talk about Mongo, right? So we keep harping that this is a Mongo or database running on top of Postgres. So where is the Postgres, right? So I'm gonna log in here, and remember that when we created this whole thing, we used port 9712. With that port 9712, you can actually connect to Postgres. So what I'm going to do here is, I don't have the T-SQL installed on this terminal, so I will directly run it from the Docker container. So again, I'm going to do docker exec, and I'm going to connect to the DocumentDB container and to the T-SQL prompt on there. We'll see if this works. And you see that the user I'm using is docdb user. That's the one I use for configuring. And then for the database, I'm using the Postgres database. Okay, so it connected to something. Let me see. So maybe we'll query it. So Postgres, you can pretty much take any kind of operation you run on the Mongo side, and if you know the Postgres command for that, you can just write it. So for instance, I want to know which from my list of collections and the databases, and we created a test database. So let's try it for the test database, right? How many collections are there? Right. So it's saying, you'll see that it listed the collection name patient, and then it's giving a bunch of metadata about that patient. So that is one of the cool parts. Let's see what else. So That is the Postgres. So the other thing I wanted to talk about was, you can actually write like I actually wrote a Python code that actually connects and runs CRUD operations against this. So you'll see that when I say I wrote Python code, I basically used the chat in here to help me with the coding. So this is some Python code. So you see that it uses username, password, host name, port, and the name of the database, right? So for that, it loads these from the environment file. So you need to, wherever you deploy, you can simply deploy this environment file in a secure location, and they can update this. Although I wouldn't say this is necessarily the best way to do it. There are much better ways to connect, but this is not like security. So we are doing this for demo purposes to just prove that this works. So this is the username, password, host, the port, the custom port 10260, and then the database. The database is, I think, test, right? That's the name of the database. And what this code will do is it will actually create a connection string right here. So based on the the connection string that I copy pasted, I'm basically recreating that on here. And what it's going to do is it's going to initialize. This is called PyMongo. So I'm using PyMongo on here. So it's initializing the client. So any database connection, usually is a client with the connection string, and then some things like timeout, connection timeout, and so on. So once the client is established, it runs a ping command to make sure that it's successfully connected. Right, and then in here, so this is where it initializes the client, and if the client is successfully established, it connects to the test database, and then it lists the collections under the test database, and then it starts inserting documents. Then it'll run a find command. So basically, we're talking about CRUD here, right? So it'll it'll insert a document, it'll find one, and this is the list collections. It's listing all the documents. So simple Python app. So let's go in here. I'm gonna copy paste. I'm gonna copy this path in a command prompt so it's easier to see. So I'll exit the PowerShell command shell. So now we have exited from the container. Let's clear the screen, switch over to this, and I'm gonna run Python app.py. So when you run this, let's see what it does. Hopefully I saved my changes. Okay, so there you go. So basically it used this connection string. It's successfully connected to the MongoDB and ran the ping command. There is a collection in the test database, and it's called patient. It inserted a new document, and then it crashed somewhere. But yeah, I probably will debug this later. But like I said, it's work in progress. But that is everything I have. Let me share. I wanted, Bala, are there any questions in connection with this presentation? I wanted to address any questions before I dive into.
No, nothing at the moment. We should be good.
Okay. Cool. Yeah, please do feel free to ask questions. I'm happy to share any and everything I've done here. So I wanted to share a few things with you guys. So what we'll do is I'm going to switch to this window, and we will exit the presentation. Right, so you'll see that the window that I'm using is a GitHub window, right? So this is my GitHub, and this is the Azure DocumentDB project, and you see some numbers in here. So basically, all these slides they are running from my GitHub. So the cool part, again, this has nothing to do with DocumentDB, but I just wanted to share this because if it's useful for me, I'm sure it will be useful for someone else. So I'm not using PowerPoint at all. For this presentation, I'm using something called MARP, which is an open source project in GitHub. So basically what I'm doing is you'll see that I have a slides.markdown file, and this has all my slides in MARP, like Markdown. And then, I have an image folder where I keep tabs of the assets. And the cool part about this is, oh yeah, GitHub workflows. I have a GitHub action. So my GitHub action basically deploys these MARP slides to GitHub pages every time I make a change. So you'll see that when I push to the main branch, and there's a change under slides, it will go ahead and dispatch this workflow. This workflow basically, it deploys to GitHub pages, and it builds it on Ubuntu using MARP CLI. So, NPM has a MARP CLI. So basically runs this MARP CLI, and then it outputs the HTML files to GitHub pages. And you have to enable GitHub pages in your GitHub repo, and that will basically enable you to do your presentation completely in the cloud itself. And it's completely open source. Again, I want to give you the repo. So the repo is this thing. I can paste it in chat, Azure DocumentDB. So I have everything that I talked about in here. Bala, I'm not able to join the chat. Are you able to share the repo? I can ping it to you.
Yeah, that should be fine. Yeah, we can add it in the comments in the video.
Cool. Are there any performance differences between DocumentDB and Mongo Atlas? I would say yes. Yes, there is. And keep in mind, there's a few, and thanks for that. That's a great question. So MongoDB Atlas, basically, if people are not familiar with it, is a hosted service, a managed service that hosts MongoDB databases on MongoDB platform. It's a basically uh, it's a proprietary platform. You can completely run it. It's a few advantages. I'll give the pros and cons. I cannot just say, oh, DocumentDB is great, you should use that instead of MongoDB, right? Like, you have to know what your tolerance is. So DocumentDB is a newish project, right? People are not familiar with it. It's MongoDB running on top of Postgres, so you need two different skill sets. So all of that. But because it's running on top of Postgres, it has Postgres is older than DocumentDB. People have been hosting Postgres since the late 80s. So there's like this whole ecosystem and knowledge base behind Postgres that's been built up since almost quote unquote the beginning of time. And there's so many reliability ops playbooks you can run with Postgres. There's extensions you can add. So you have all that goodness, especially on the operations part that comes with hosting Postgres. That MongoDB Atlas, while MongoDB is specialized in it, you don't have that extensive history. And Postgres is definitely probably the most reliable, scalable database system that is being that has been in operation for a long time, right? Um, but with MongoDB Atlas, these are hosted by the people who have forever developed MongoDB, so they know all the ins and outs. They have their own tweaks and tips and tricks to do that. I'm not sure that others will necessarily know because it's proprietary. So it's kind of like a trade-off. Yeah, Postgres people are, it runs on Postgres, so over time we feel like it's going to be more of the de facto way of hosting it. But there's always like the MongoDB way of hosting it, which has been around forever. So performance-wise, I would say, having seen the DocumentDB in action and the type of customers that use DocumentDB, I would have no hesitancy putting up DocumentDB for any kind of performance metrics on comparable hardware against Postgres. So I feel that it would probably outdo it, but that's just my opinion. I could be biased, but great question.
You don't see any other questions, Santosh?
Yes, you're welcome. The great question, and yeah, definitely. And I will share the. In fact, let's do this. Give me a minute. Let's do this. Bala, can I share my screen again?
Here you go.
So I'm again, I'm doing this live, so please don't kill me.
We're able to see it. Let's go
Okay.
back to the other screen.
Okay. So this is the link for all the slides and the code and everything else. So you can just point your phones at this and jump to my GitHub repo, and feel free to fork it. Feel free to use it. It's all MIT open source. It's just for education. So please use it wisely.
Thank you very much, Santosh, for taking time and walking through this new project. It's pretty exciting. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. We'll see you again next month.
Thank you, folks.